This is Bedrest Coach Darline Turner, owner and founder of Mamas on Bedrest and Beyond, and it's Video Wednesday. Today we're talking about parenting, and I titled this Spank or Not to Spank, Parenting Research Update. I'm always fascinated by how sometimes life is mirroring what's going on in research, or maybe it's just because what's going on in my life I'm more heightened to, so I notice it in the research. But I've been having kind of a week of, I don't want to say intense parenting, but I would say parenting growth. And, I'm preparing to do a video blog for you guys, and I saw these articles on parenting, and I was like, I think I really want to do that. So I decided to kind of shift gears and bring in some of this study information because, for me, it really hit home. And I know many of you are on bed rest and you're thinking, well, I'm not even at the parenting stage yet. I know many of you on bed rest have older children. I just found this stuff fascinating, and I really just wanted to share with you. So just a little brief ditty into my life, what's been going on. My 11-year-old is getting ready to go into middle school. And here in Austin, you can either go to the school in your neighborhood, or they have different magnet schools, or, you can opt to go to private school, do whatever. And, we've had some challenges with public school for a lot of different reasons. And I'm just going to suffice it to say that I have just felt that it was time for my daughter to have a different environment. So she applied to one of the magnet schools that she really wanted to get into, which was interesting. It was a girls' school, and she didn't get in, and she was kind of devastated. And I looked at some other schools, and I have to say I hadn't thought of private school because I was like, holy crap, it's so expensive. But, once we started looking and knowing her learning habits, she has a few learning challenges, especially where it relates to math. And, I just felt that this was the best option for her. But it was really interesting because there was this push, pull, tug within me. Do I force her to do what I want her to do, i.e., you're going to this school and that's it, versus what I have said is she said, well, I just really want to be with all of my friends. And so that was kind of the conundrum that I had, and I was kind of churning on it, and I'm talking with my friends like, what do I do? What do you think? And it turns out that when I really thought about it, it really harkened back to how I was raised. And I was raised by very strict parents, loved me to death, and I know that they did the things they did because they wanted what was best for me. But very old school, you do what we say, don't ask questions. Parents, are right, and you just kind of go along with the program. And I found that that's not a style that I want to promote, or, a legacy that I want to continue. So anyway, it's been an interesting week, and, that's just kind of my little story in the nutshell. But so imagine my surprise as I'm going along and I'm preparing, and I was on Medline, and it says, how you parent is partly genetic. And I was like, holy moly. And, it was just real interesting. So this is the first study, and it is by Michigan researchers out of Michigan State University. And they're saying that genes play a major role in parenting styles. And I was like, well, that's interesting. The way we parent is not solely a function of the way we were parented as children, said study author S. Alexandra Burt, and she's an associate professor of psychology at Michigan State. There also tends to be genetic influences on parenting. And I'm like, I always wonder, how do you figure this out? How do you genotype people? Or, you take blood and you look at the genes. Do you, is there a gene for parenting? I don't know. But apparently there is some sort of genetic predisposition to how we parent. And according to Burt and her colleagues, they analyzed 56 studies that included more than 20,000 families worldwide. And from all of this, data compilation, they concluded that genes influence anywhere from 23 to 40% of parents' warmth, control, and negativity towards their children. So what I took away from this is your genes, and this kind of makes sense, your kind of personality will in some ways dictate the type of parent you'll be. Like, because if you're kind of a stoic, standoffish person, you're not likely to be warm and fuzzy with your children. Not likely, But, according to this, you have a stronger predisposition to be kind of the more standoffish parent, what have you. Um, the findings challenge the popular belief that how parents deal with their children is solely the result of how they were parented. And I have to say, I believed that. That was, what I thought until I had children. Because when I had my children, I made some very conscious decisions that I didn't want to do certain things that my parents did. Um, but what the researchers are saying is it's not clear whether genes have a direct or indirect effect on parenting. So, it's still a little nebulous, but it's interesting, I thought, that they made that correlation from how you are genetically, meaning, what's your disposition, what's your temperament, that is, in fact, going to affect how you parent. And I have seen that because I'm much more excitable than my children's father. So, with me, you'll see me hair aflame when something happens, whereas he's going to like, well, it's just very interesting because he's much more kind of somewhat introverted, more calm, and more, than I am. I'm like, so I think I think that had some interesting, it gave me some interesting insight. But what next? I mean, it was like boom, boom, 2 days in a row. Spanking triggers vicious cycle. Well, I have all kinds of thoughts, issues, however you say, because I was spanked as a child. Now, I don't think it killed me. I'm sitting here before you. I'm perfectly fine. But I've always thought, I don't think that really made any big difference. All it did was make me scared and make me at times not do things, not so much because I didn't make the decision, oh, this isn't a good thing to do, was, oh, I don't want to have to face mom and dad when I go home, so I'm not going to do it. And I don't know if that is the proper way to teach our children to reason and rationale how they're going to do things. But anyway, that aside, this is what this study says. And this one is from, these findings are based on almost 1,900 families from the Fragile Families and Child Well-Being Study. And where is this out of? Let me see. Because this is a group, kind of a consortium of researchers. And there's Michael McKenzie, who is an associate professor at Columbia University School of Social Work, Andrew Addisman, Chief of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics at the Stephen and Alexandra Cohen Children's Medical Center of New York. And I think they are the only two people. And this study is published in the Journal of Youth and Adolescents Medicine online. What they're saying is parents who spank unruly children may not know it, but they are participating in a vicious cycle that will lead to both more spankings and more misbehavior in coming years. I don't know. Now, I think it depends on the child. I mean, I know, like I said, I wasn't spanked a billion times, but it kind of curtailed some of my behavior. But, I don't know. Researchers wanted to resolve the age-old chicken and egg question that surrounds the issue of physical discipline in children. Do spankings promote aggression in children, or do naturally aggressive children simply receive more spankings? And according to these guys, both is what happens. And they talk about it in terms of, they say you can think of it as an escalating arms race, where the parent gets more coercive and the child gets more aggressive, and they get locked into this cycle. And I can definitely see how that is, because parent gets mad, child reacts, parent gets mad, child reacts, or child reacts, parent gets mad, and it does become a vicious cycle. But it was really, really interesting. Families took part in an assessment shortly after giving birth, and when the children were approximately 1, 3, 5, and 9 years old. The assessments included questions about whether the children received spankings and to the extent to which the children behaved aggressively, broke rules, or acted surly or antagonistic. About 28% of the mothers reported spanking their children in the first year of life, increasing to 57% at age 3, and then hovering around 53% at ages 5 and 49% at age 9. It was interesting. I mean, the researchers found that at each age, children who exhibited more behavioral problems went on to experience more spanking at a later age. But then is it because the child was more difficult, or, but they're saying some children are eliciting higher levels of physical discipline, and high levels of physical discipline are in turn associated with later higher levels of parental aggression. So, they're saying it goes round and round. I have to say that has not been what it was. That has not been my experience. I mean, I know me and a whole bunch of my friends, we were spanked. Parents only did it once or twice because you knew, okay, they're going to cream me. I'm going to not do this. I don't know them. They don't talk about the method of spanking. They don't go into all that. So I can't really say, but I suppose depending on how the spanking would go, there could be this whole aggressive cycle where the kid gets more defiant, or, I mean, I don't know. They didn't really break that part out, so I can't say, but their findings are that this study that they did put an end to the chicken or the egg debate because, as Dr. Dr. Andrew Addisman says, I see it starting with the egg being the spanking. He's saying it's the spanking, and then spanking leads to more aggressive behavior, and aggressive behavior then leads to more spanking. Don't know. But I just thought it was interesting because, as you're sitting here on bed rest, waiting for this lovely little baby to come, all cute and cuddly, ooh, it kind of, I would say, think about how you want to raise your child. And I think we all do. And one of the things that I thought was really, or I found really to ring true, is you can't know how you're going to parent until you have the child. I am a firm believer of that because I have 2 children, as you know. And I love them both and everything, but I can honestly say I don't parent them the same way because my daughter, especially now, she's at a point where I can say, okay, you did X. Do you really think you made a good decision with that? What do you think about that? Do you think that was really the best way to go? And she's like, My son, I can do that with, but where I would say my parents would have spanked me, I can give him the look and say, look here, mister, I don't appreciate that. And he steps back. And it's really interesting because I didn't really have to have that tone of voice with my daughter. I could just say, hey, that's not okay. But with my son, I had to have a little bit more. So, I don't know if it's male versus female or, he's younger. I do see he's younger and he's trying to assert some sort of, authority or something because he's the youngest. But I definitely see it as differences in the children. And what I have found, I am not a researcher, I am not a social worker, is you have to look at the child and see kind of what their temperament is. Because, I mean, even as babies, I used to put a little blanket down. My daughter would stay there. She would play with her toys. I knew exactly where she was. I had my son. I put a blanket down. I put toys. That was like the one place in the room he didn't go. I mean, it's just children, and it's their temperaments. And he, to this day, is just so much more curious than she was. I mean, we're in the store, and I'm scanning my groceries, and he hits the button on the thing, and the whole thing was erased. I was like, what are you doing? I mean, he's more curious. He's more, I don't want to say confrontational because he's not aggressive, but I'll say something to him. He's like, well, why? How come? Why? And his temperament is he wants to know. He wants a reason. And I find with him, when I'm saying no, if I actually tell him why, he'll usually go, oh, okay. And the confrontation's over. Whereas when I was a kid, if my parents said no and I said why, that was another smack. I mean, you just didn't get to say why. You didn't get to ask. You didn't get to challenge. And I can remember distinctly, my son maybe was 5-ish, and I told him no for something. He asked me for something, and I said no. And he said, but Mom, you said, and this kid gave me one of the best counter arguments to my decision that I gave him what he asked for because it was well thought out. For a 5-year-old, he used a really good word use. And quite frankly, he was right. And it was really interesting. And I was, secretly really proud of him that he said, but Mom, no, you said, and he gave me XYZ reason. And he said, and you said if we did this, then we could have this. And I thought, he's absolutely right. I can't say one thing and then change my word for whatever the reason was. I was tired, I was grumpy, I was cooking dinner, whatever. And he called me on it. I don't even know, I guess I might at this age if I would even call my parents on something. I mean, part of me, I don't even bother because I'm like, I don't even live at home. I only go home to visit my parents a few times a year. Why am I going to make a big deal out of things? But I feel like with our children, and as this study, both of these studies are saying, parenting, yes, there are genetic components, I guess, in terms of temperament. You come at things with the different ways and how you're raised. But I think the real important third part of this is you have to look at the temperament and the behavior of your child and then adjust. I don't think back in the day when my parents were raising me and my sisters, anyone talked about, I think there was, all the stuff with Dr. Spock and, I don't know kind of what my parents were reading, if anything. But I have to say, I don't read a whole lot on parenting, but I am a huge proponent of kind of looking at what my kids are doing and how they're reacting to things and how they're reacting to me before I kind of try and blow up at them. I do blow up. I'll admit I am not perfect. Who knew? But in trying to take a moment and kind of see now what would have driven this, I often come to a better. I find I'm far less punitive. That's the first thing. And I often get a much better understanding of what's going on with my child. And it's oftentimes, it has nothing to do with what they've done or what happened or whether they got a note sent home from school for something they did in class. So I just want to put this bee in your bonnet. I think the issue of spanking versus spanking is very personal. I really don't spank anymore. One, because my kids are old enough that I really can reason with them. And two, personally, I don't feel like it was all that effective, except in extreme cases. And even then, sometimes I have to wonder. But sometimes you got to snatch a kid if they're in danger, and you just got to do it. But by and large, I found better ways to interact with my kids. And I have just found that if I step back and really look at the situation and look at them, see how they're doing, are they nervous? Are they upset? And listen to their side. This is something else that I've noticed. Listen to their side. Like one time my son got a note sent home from school and he got a little demerit thing. And, he was upset because he thought, his dad and I were going to cream him. And he was, but Mom, you got to listen. So I listened to his side and it turned out it wasn't even his fault. And I had to go back and have a little chat with his teacher. But, in my day, we would have just been creamed because we got a note home. So, it's learning to be adaptive. It's learning to stand back and listen. And for me, the biggest learning has been, okay, yes, I'm the adult, but that doesn't always make me right. And that's not something I saw growing up. And that I think has been the biggest aha, the biggest training, the biggest learning that I have had as a parent. Just because I'm the adult, just because I'm the parent, that doesn't make me right. And at times, as I'm dialoguing and discording and quite frankly arguing with my kids, I'm not right. And to take that for what it is. And my kids have called me on it. And it's interesting because I'm like, man, if I was their age, I never would have gotten to say this. But I'm glad that they are. And I'm glad that they feel comfortable speaking up. And they're respectful. They're not yelling. They're not screaming. They're not being crazy. And they have a voice that I don't think I developed until far later in my life. And I hope it'll take them a lot further, faster. So this is my little itty bitty foray into parenting. I highly recommend, if you feel like it, checking out these studies. I will actually post the citations on the header to this video. It was just interesting. And just think about it as you're there on bed rest, you're getting this great little person. But as I said, keep in mind, see the child before you kind of formulate, well, this is how I was raised, this is how I'm going to do it. And I think most of you all are into that because everybody in the community all seem real cool. So anyway, that's it for me. Bedrest Coach Darline Turner, owner and founder of Mamas on Bedrest and Beyond. Thanks for hanging out with me.